close those types of jobs down or put more stringent standards on them? Because is someone else getting paid less now to do that job, but still doing that job? I mean, we just moved one segment of vulnerable people into a new sector, but did we actually end the faucet, turn the faucet off? That's my question.
Thank you so much for that very rich and diverse question. And let me give a shout out to California, since I am a Californian, and glad to see that someone from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District has made it all the way to Sharm el-Sheikh to participate. So thank you very much. Oh, there's two of you. Wow, this is great. And talking about migration, because we have so many migrants in California. So let me just, there's one last question that a colleague wanted to ask, and then we'll take that round first and to our panelists before we move on. Please.
Thank you. My name is Marguerite. I'm with the European Environmental Bureau. I'm really happy gender was mentioned a few times, but more generally my question is, how does the human rights dimension fit into this debate? We know that green jobs are not necessarily decent jobs, and we know that climate migration measures are not necessarily aligned with climate justice principles. So I'm wondering what your views are and how you integrate this practically within your programs. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And sorry, I missed, you said you're with the European Union?
Environmental Bureau.
Okay, European Union Environmental Bureau. Thank you so much. Well, what a diverse set of questions. I am simply going to turn to the panelists in order, so maybe Bangladesh, US, and then Robert and Paula, if we can do that, please.
No problem. Thank you. I think from Kiribati, you ask a questions to how we are, taking actions to make our migrant workers skilled so that they do not face adverse situations when they go abroad as a migrant. So I would like to answer these questions from two angles, one from domestically and one from international perspective. So I just would like to also share two experiences that Bangladesh government is doing for the climate induced people, climate migrants. In Cox's Bazar, where we sheltered Rohingya people from Myanmar. So we built a housing project, which is the world's biggest housing projects only for the displaced people. So we have we are building 139 5-story building for almost 4,400 families, climate migrants, displaced people. And also we are making provisions for their livelihoods in another city in a green factory. We are building green factories in that areas, and climate migrants are getting priorities, getting jobs in those factories. And from our Ministry of Expatriates Welfare and Overseas Employment, we have taken many initiatives nationally to skill our workers, because this year our slogan is to go abroad with skill. We do not also want to see our people in an adverse situation. So we have taken so many training sessions for these according to their knowledge, or according to their skills, according to their capacity. We are giving them training to their level, according to their level. So now we are focusing on sending skilled migrants rather than sending someone as without any skill. This is one we are doing, and we have taken we have been formulating a comprehensive reintegration policy. I think we'll be able to launch this soon with the support of IOM, and I think ILO is also supporting in that policy. So we have included climate migrants in that policy. Whoever come from abroad as a migrant, legal, illegal, climate, regular, whatever, we will integrate them in our national systems, and we will reskill them, and we'll try to send them again in a regular pathway. So this is our national initiatives. In the international front, I just would like to say that we have to open the regular pathway of migration. Then people would be encouraged to go abroad with necessary skills and capacity. Otherwise, we cannot stop, because the people who are forced, they are not willing to migrate. So this migration is the last resort. So this cannot be a viable solution. So in order to stop irregular migration, we need to open regular pathway of migration. And also these green jobs, green economy, we would like to see investment in our countries in these sectors so that we can employ our people there. We can generate employment for them in-house, domestically, so that they can have a livelihood, decent livelihood, and they do not need to go abroad. So we would like to invite international partners to see these perspectives. I have a second question. Can I answer them both? So you wanted to know the regional arrangement of the government of Bangladesh for dealing with this human mobility. Okay, I'm sure that you know that Bangladesh spearheaded the idea of the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration, which was adopted in 2018. And Bangladesh is a champion country of the GCM. So we definitely promote safe, orderly and regular migration. In the regional forum, we are active both in international and regional forum. We have Colombo process, where Bangladesh takes leaderships and also raises these issues. On the international forum, we are collaborating with as I have already mentioned, you are not at that time, as a member of CVF Troika, we are taking this initiative for, this issue forward to the international platform. And also as a this year in May, Bangladesh co-facilitated the International Migration Review Forum, the first ever International Migration Review Forum, where we have captured this phenomena, the human mobility in regards of climate change. So we are vocal from our part, and we would like to see these human mobility issues to be the center at the climate and migration discourses. And we also, again, I would like to say that since 2010, we are seeing that we are discussing about this loss and damage, about this mobility, but we haven't seen that much progress. So we hope that from this COP, we would be knowing some good results, both in the administrative mechanism and also separate financial mechanism to address this issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Lindsay, please. You can take the question.
Thank you, and I'm sorry, I will try to address all of the questions to the best of my ability. So first I wanted to respond to your questions. First, I want to just say thank you for raising the issue of migration and dignity. The United States, in our commitment to safe, orderly, humane migration, we believe that also very much includes dignity and worker protections. And so I did want to raise something that I neglected to earlier, which is some of the work that we have been doing to through our partners to promote ethical recruitment into industries, and that's one of the things that I think is very important. I know that the ILO has done some work on this. We've worked on it with IOM, and so I think that is a very important aspect that hasn't come out quite as much on this panel, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that and recognize that. In terms of pathways and proposals for migration into the United States, you may be aware, migration and pathways within the United States it's a complicated dialogue. That's why we've been really looking. There are actions that the United States can take from an administrative level that can help promote pathways, and then there are things that are just going to be longer-term solutions, and those require legislative change. And so there are a number of proposals, many of them which relate to labor migration, many of them which relate to protections that exist on the table. Whether or not those will be moving forward through the Congress at any time soon, I don't speculate on that, but I'd be very happy to talk to you about some of the other things in mind. Turning to your question about just the idea of just transitions and some of the contracts and whatnot. That goes a little bit beyond my refugee and migration expertise. But I will say, this is that green jobs and transition, this is going to take time. And in the meantime, we really do commit to working towards coherence across global policy, coherence across all policy, and so we're really picking up on the worker protections pieces and others as we work together with our colleagues across the U.S. government and otherwise to really address some of these longer term other issues. In terms of partnerships with cities. When we did the climate report, in order to produce the climate report, we actually, it was a very consultative process in which we reached out to a number of different groups, whether they were rights-based advocacy groups, affected persons. We also very much engaged some of the mayors in inputs to hear their thoughts on what we need to address and what some of the connections that they are seeing. And so we were excited to have their involvement there. We understand that cities are the ones that are adapting most and also experiencing movement. And so we really want to make sure that we continue that dialogue with cities. So we very much recognize the importance of cities in this discussion. In terms of, again, on the green jobs front and the issue that you raised, again, this is a bit beyond my area of expertise, so I will just flag that. But just to say, again, the green jobs transition is one that the United States is going through and is moving towards, and I hope to be able to have more to report to you on progress on that, but we very much, again, this is the importance of hearing from groups on the ground about what you're seeing and how we can always do better. And so I just want to stress that point. So I'm sorry that's a bit of an unsatisfactory answer probably to both of you, but I appreciate you raising it, and I will, again, with colleagues. And then in terms of what we're doing to bring the human rights dimension into the debate, again, going back to the idea that this is that the impact of climate change on the world is a human security issue. We do from the State Department particularly from the Refugee and Migration Bureau. This is very much we want to look at this through the protection lens, through the protection of rights and through the protection of those who are displaced, and also again the protection of those who make the choice to go through regular, and we really do think that establishing regular pathways and protections in that way really does promote that. So, thank you.
Okay, I'll try to be as concise as possible so that my colleague can have ample time afterwards. If we want to talk about this at the end, we can. I'd be very glad to stay on. So yeah, first of all, thank you very much. Those were, I think, some of the best questions I've heard so far in any side event I've participated in. I'll try to kind of group some of my answers because they're quite powerful and complex questions, right? And to be honest, I mean, there's many ways to answer this, but at the end of the day, the first thing I want to say is we in this space and in COP and in a lot of these discussions, at the end of the day, we have to sometimes put a bit of a dose of realism. And yeah, we have to admit, there's a lot of things going on in the world. It is not easy. It is very challenging. The current situation, the status quo is what we have to change, right? So there's many problems when it comes to, the quality of jobs, the unemployment, displacement, disasters, human rights, all of this, right? So that's why we're all here. And I feel that, sometimes we drill into the specifics because that's where we can start seeing some of the potential solutions, because when you look at the whole of it, it can be a bit overwhelming sometimes, right? For the island nations and sea level rise situation, to me, you have to look at the situation. It is not good, and you have to try and find the best way to deal with it. Perhaps there will have to be some compromises sometimes, but to me, at least, one of the best ways is to engage people and try to be forceful in how you deal with it. And then the skills element, to me, I think is one potential solution. But at the end of the day, yeah, the world we're in now, it depends on markets, it depends on offer and demand. Possibly there will be some, if you have to accept a job that's potentially not the highest salary, maybe you have to do that because, you know, people are migrating because of war, people are being displaced when they don't want to be. And if that's the reality, the best you can do is try to you know, come out of it as best you can. And the way to do that is to get educated and advocate for your position. On the other hand, I feel like the whole just transition agenda and the whole, you know, green skills, nature-based solutions, there's a lot of things happening where I feel like there could be some synergies, you know. Some countries are looking for workers for particular things with particular skills. If you find that out, if you analyze the situation, if you prepare your people with those skills, maybe you can find an arrangement with certain countries or things like that. So that's one thing. On the question of Canada and, you know, being realistic, like, yeah, you know, here we're trying to have more of a positive message. You know, if you look at the actual numbers globally, you know, fossil fuel consumption has not been shooting down like a star. That's the reality. Our current economy has been built up for over 100 years in the system we're in. Energy consumption is the base of economic growth and prosperity and livelihoods. We cannot stop it and shut it off overnight because then it will be even worse. So what we're trying to do is to have a transition which will take time. It takes political will, and we all know politics is very complicated, and there is no silver bullet. It's coming, you know, progress is happening in some ways, but obviously it's not perfect. On the other hand, depending on the country, just transition plans have been put in place, you know. So I know for Canada, for example, there was a task force on just transition created by the government that did some analysis, that did some consultations, etc. But again, countries, you know, you have to link it back to the real economy. Countries depend on their incomes. For example, Nigeria, 40% of GDP comes from fossil fuel. So how do you want to get rid of 40% of your GDP while ensuring that your people survive and prosper? It's not an easy circle to square, right? And other countries, like in Spain, for example, they're quite advanced on the just transition agenda. They've put in place a whole framework where they collaborate with workers and employers. So it varies, but there are some positive signs. On the question of the states, you know, in the states there's also been a lot of analysis and research on different on transitions out of coal production and you know, the Appalachia region, for example. And then, you know, to go back to the question of jobs disappearing, like, yeah, sometimes jobs do disappear, and then what happens in those regions? Well, sometimes they economically decline. Why? Because there was no proper plan put in place, and there was no plan for the future or economic diversification put there. On the other hand, you know, the fossil fuel jobs that the unions stick to because of the conditions, like, yeah, that's a very good point. But you could also, depends how you look at it, it depends how it's set up. The shale industry in the States, it's a bit of a boom and bust cycle, right? So you can have a short-term profit, but then in 2 years, the price of oil changes, your whole shale industry like goes way down, and then you're out of a job. Potentially solar and renewable can be more sustainable in the long term. Maybe you won't have the same yearly salary, but you will have a job for the next 20 years if it's set up properly. If you put a circular economy in place, you're going to get more jobs because you're going to be, you know, recycling the materials that were put in place initially. So it really depends, but I understand people are afraid, and of course you don't want to, you know, if somebody told me, do you want to leave your job and I give you one that's paid less, I mean, I would say no as well, right? At the end of the day, the last point I just wanted to make was on the green jobs and human rights. The ILO definition of green jobs includes decent work. So if you ask the ILO, the only jobs that are green are the ones that are decent as well. Of course, that's an additional requirement, which makes it so that, you know, there are less green jobs if you look at reality. Of course, a lot of jobs are not so decent from time to time, and again, you know, that's the world is big, it's diverse, there's many things wrong and there's some things right. The human rights issue is definitely very closely connected to all of this, and it's a growing issue on the agenda. There was the, you know, recent resolution on the right to a clean and safe and healthy environment. This discussion is coming up a lot, and I think in the next years it will become, you know, it will link up with the just transition and everything else. And I'll stop here for now. I feel like I'm running out of time.
Thank you so much. Please, Paula.
Thanks, Michelle. How long do we have?
I know,
day
many
to
questions. Well, we have 5 minutes left, so.
I'll be quick, and I mean, I also wanted to thank you for raising these important points, all of you, because I mean, it shows that there's a lot of work to be done by you, Michelle, and your team, because the discussion is so rich and it tackles so many angles that we can't just jump on it overnight or not be prepared. We need to be informed, we need evidence, we need experiences on the ground that informs then the decisions of the policy makers, and we also need to strengthen the existing mechanism of social dialogue, of collective bargaining, of engagement of all the partners to find solutions that are workable for the workers. But I'm not trying to avoid the questions with this. I'll go into this. I think, I mean, all you touched upon in your first intervention, how do we avoid that people are becoming cheap labor? Education is central for this, and thanks for raising the example that you made about retraining or upskilling the workers before they migrate, because pre-departure trainings are so important. But I would bring here the voice of a colleague who's not here from the Public Service International, who would say, responding to this question, that we have to approach the issues from a very much holistic perspective and make sure that our public system, our public services are well funded, that can deliver the services like education, like training, like care that the workers need, so that migration, so that they are able to tackle the issues at the basis, like poverty, and people are not forced into migration pathways because of the necessity. So this is one, but of course we need to work for more, or to support or to push for more legal pathways to migration, and I'm happy that the countries represented here are on board in this common endeavor, because we know that I've seen that nobody has touched upon the question of SARA on GCC countries, or slightly, but because what we see in reality really is that the issue of forced displacement because of climate change, so from climate vulnerable countries, is deeply linked to inequalities, and it might risk to become, it's actually becoming already, a key driver of debt for the workers who migrate and entry into modern slavery or a spiral of exploitation, let's say, for the workers. So when they are forced to displace and undergoing, and your guide and the policy brief you presented is quite clear on this, when workers are forced into irregular, sudden and unsafe migration pathways because of a sudden climate event, these risks become the reality, and this is really where we need to look at and to find solutions so that this doesn't happen. And the decent work dimension is related to this. Very quickly, because it's, well, I would have so many other issues to discuss about the issues of climate privilege in the cities, where there is a big disconnect between houses which are providing for, which are built according to green building standards and designed to respond to the increasing heat and temperature in the cities, and the workers, temporary workers who built the houses that are segregated into poorly planned dormitories that have little regard for the climate. I'm mentioning this because you might have in mind a region when we speak about this kind of segregation that doesn't help the integration and in the destination countries, but it actually happens everywhere, and this is why this issue of segregation, this is why it's important to look at decent work, certainly, but also at a broader issue of welfare when we discuss the issue of forced displacement and migration. So the living conditions are a big part for those who migrate temporarily in search for a job, and better conditions that have to be part of the discussion. So the city dimension here is important, is crucial. I'm not going to go deep in this because we have authorities represented, but we said climate change is a we always say that climate change is a global issue with local impacts. So we have to look at the local at all time. As trade unions, we are engaged in the discussion with the cities around new green jobs and what's needed and what's the role of workers. How can they define themselves as well, the skills they need for the green transition? I'm not sure that all the time migrant workers are brought into the discussion, so it's difficult as well to tap on their agency to define what decent work means for them. And a key component of decent work is the right to skills, to education, to reskilling, and to further training. So this is the key angle where I think we could find a middle ground altogether and where we can continue to work. I'll try to respond with a sentence to the two questions together. What do we do with jobs that are not sustainable anymore and they transit towards sustainable, decent and sustainable jobs? So in construction, well, I gave the example of the salt miners, but it's also true for other works in constructions that are energy intensive, like cement or others that will see many workers being demobilized. So again, we need to strengthen the dialogue tools that we have and to manage together these transitions through dialogue with the employers, with the companies, with the local authorities, because this is how workers can buy in the change, can be part of the change, can support the change. If solutions are brought from top down, we risk that the workers push them back. So the salt miners, actually, they continue to do the salt mining job, but it has now become, thanks to the installation of solar panels, a green job. And it's less heavy, more healthy, etc. Same for those professions that are transforming, are becoming green. They can become green, but there's no green transition without a decent work transition. And that's the answer I wanted to give to the human rights questions. Labor rights are human rights. So every time we organize workers at their workplace and we work to leverage their agency to be the voice of the change they want to be, this is integrating the human rights into everything we do. Luckily, we have the instruments. We have the ILO, we have the UN guiding principles, we have government on boards, and we can do it to end on a positive note. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that you were able to end on a positive note, and we've just run out of time, but I think this has been a really rich discussion. I would say the issues that have been raised are really diverse. We've captured some of our these in some of our guidance, whether it's fair recruitment, social protection, issues of international labor standards, how do you apply them, how are governments dealing with this issue. There's no one size fits all. But we hope that international standards and human rights are at least the baseline, the basis on which we move forward. And I would say putting social justice at the center of adaptation discussions is really a good start. And opening regular pathways and putting migration within that dialogue is something we're going to have to get to. I hope we see that, if not here, that it really transforms the dialogue in the next COP. And that when we meet again at the next COP, we're talking about real solutions and lots more examples of lessons learned rather than back at the beginning. So please download the International Labor Organization's new policy guidance on just transitions in labor migration and climate. And really, I would like everyone to to say thank you to our wonderful audience who had great questions. And this is really a high bar to meet. If Robert says he has not in this forum heard such great questions, that was because of you and the diversity you bring. And thank you to all our panelists who brought such rich discussions and expertise behind this. So let's have a round of applause for everyone, please. And thank you so much. We hope to see you back for others. There is an evening climate mobility discussion that we're having through the UN Network on Migration. ILO and the UNFCCC Secretariat, as well as IOM, are co-leads of a new work stream on migration and climate change. And we're going to have another set of discussions, a little more broad perhaps, but at 5:45 this evening in the UN Egypt Pavilion, so please join us then. Thank you all very much.
it okay? How does it look? Good?
Okay? You are getting it? Is it clear? Okay, na?
And then
you.